Family. Dungeon family, welcome to the Practical Purpose Podcast. Midday motivation, man. We just happy to be here, man. I just wanted to get on for a few minutes just to talk to you. Midday. I don't know where you are. You could be at the water cooler. You could be sitting in the car on your lunch break, trying to get away from them crazy people at your job. But go on and like, share, subscribe. Go on and share this out. Share this out with some people. We're going to talk a few minutes today about resilience. So, it's going to be important. It's going to be key. It's going to be essential that you lock in today just for a few minutes on your lunch break. This is a Thursday at 12 o'clock p.m. Now, just something to get you through the week, get you through the rest of the week, get you to the weekend today. Listen, I'm a little tired. We had attended a networking event this morning, man. If you got any type of business, any type of skill, anything that you do, it's important that you get out there. It's important that you get out there and network. Like, you go meet people, talk to people. I met a lot of people this morning, different walks of life than I have, but was able to really share some things with them and network with them and learn a lot from them as well. So one thing that we have to do a better job as people is getting out there, getting ourselves out there to network, to talk to people, to share what our gifts and our talents are. So we won't be on long today. We won't be on long, but we want to talk about resilience. Somebody asked me, they said, well, where do you get the topics from that you talk about on the show? I get them from y'all. So people text me, call me, email me all the time, telling me what it is they want to hear something on. They want to hear a lesson on. I want to be taught on. And so we kind of talk about the things that people need to hear. Right. Because one thing that's key and that's important, and again, we're just talking today. One thing that's important is that you understand that if you're not in the business of trying to help somebody, then you're in the wrong business. I don't care what that business may be on paper. If you're not trying to help anybody, if you're not doing something to better other people, then there's always going to be some void left in your life, because all of us were placed here to be a benefit to someone else, right? And so a lot of times the topics that we have on the Practical Purpose Podcast are topics that are given to us from people who need to hear something about it. All right. And hopefully it's something that's encouraging, that'll help you go to the next level in whatever it is that you're doing. Right. So today we're going to talk about resilience in a few seconds.
1, 2. Yeah. 1, 2. We living life with a practical purpose, making every day worth it. Live from the dungeon, we go deeper than the surface, leading with wisdom from the street to the churches. Searching, what seeking you find? We speaking right to your mind. The sun ain't fighting to shine, no diamonds either. Light hit the Jews and turn fools to believers. Steady making moves and teaching truth to the leaders. Use all these tools just so you can supersede us. It's L. Yeah. Say 1, 2. Yeah. Say 1, 2. Yeah. Yeah. For real.
All right. Resilience. How resilient are you in your life, in things that you go through, things that you face? How resilient are you? Listen, I like to think about resilience like a rubber band, right? You stretch a rubber band out, you stretch it out, you stretch it out, the rubber band bounce back, right? It always bounce back. Resilience is that ability to be in a difficult situation and know how to recover from that difficult situation. Listen, all of us have at some point had to be resilient. It's success is not defined by not falling. Success, let me say that again, is not defined by not falling. Success is actually defined by how many times you get back up and you complete the task that you were sent to do. All right. So how resilient are you? Because what I found in this social media era, what I found in this time that we live in, is that there's so many people who are on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. They're looking at to compare their lives to other people. But what's true is that they don't know how to recover from disappointment in their own lives. And so because they're in this mode of comparison, they're comparing themselves to so many other people, they're not able to fully be conscious and aware about who they are. Right. And we're going to get to that in a second. But if you're not fully aware of who you are, it's difficult to be resilient. All right, you've got to understand who you are. And resilience is something that everybody needs. Listen, if you're going to be successful in life, if you're going to do anything in a fashion in which you're going to impact others in a positive way, you've got to be resilient. What is resilience? The capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties. It's the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, right? And the longer you live, the more resilient you have to be. Listen, Webster defines it as elasticity. Elasticity, again, that's that rubber band effect. That's that ability to bounce back when you're being stretched out. Resilient, the ability to bounce back when you're being stretched out. And when you think about it in so many other ways, in so many areas of our life, we have to be resilient because we are always being faced with difficulty, right? The capacity of a person to maintain their core purpose, listen to this, maintain their core purpose and integrity in the face of dramatically changing circumstances. Listen, the ability to not only overcome setbacks, but to also move forward. Listen, we struggle with that. We struggle with that. We struggle with moving forward. We struggle with overcoming setbacks. And I promise you that if you're going to be successful on your job, your 9 to 5, if you're going to be successful in your entrepreneurial efforts, right? If you're going to be successful in whatever career field you have, if you're going to be successful as a mother, father, whatever it is that you do or responsible for, you're going to have to learn the characteristics and attributes of being resilient, because life is not always going to be a silver spoon. What I think Langston Hughes says, life it hasn't been a crystal stair, right? So you've got to understand the importance of being resilient, because everything doesn't always go your way, right? And that's a difficult concept for us to have. And I find that concept is difficult amongst our youth to try to get over to them. Life doesn't always go your way. Like life doesn't happen as you have planned it to happen all the time. And on this podcast, we always talk about goals, plans, strategy, support. We talk about those things, but Mike Tyson says everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth, right? You got to understand that when you get hit in the mouth, how do I bounce back? What qualities do I need to bounce back? So listen, you don't know how strong you are or can be until you are put in a position that requires that strength. Let me say that again. You don't know how strong you are or can be until you're put in a position that requires that strength. Listen, that oftentimes, in order for you to learn who you are and learn who you are not, you got to be put in some difficult situations. It's just how God has created the world to be. Like, look, if life is anything, life is difficult. And even the person who seemingly has it all, has the biggest bank account, has the largest house, has the most amount of cars, there's something in their life that's causing them some difficulty, and there's something in their life that requires resilience. Right. Right. I like the point of that definition that says the capacity of a person to maintain their core purpose. That word capacity is key, right? Because if you're in any type of leadership position, you hear all the time building capacity. Well, how do you actually build capacity? You build capacity by putting people in positions to grow, putting them in difficult positions so that they can overcome. That's what builds capacity. We talk about that, especially I do a lot of speaking in the Christian sector, in the church world, and one thing I tell them is we do a lot of preaching to people, we do no teaching, and so we're not building capacity in disciples. We're not building capacity amongst people. In order for you to be built up, in order for you to have the capacity to grow, you've got to be placed in situations that require that capacity. Let me say that again. If you want to be built up, if you want to grow, you have to be put in positions that require that growth, that require that capacity. And oftentimes we ask for things without understanding that it's not going to come shiny. Right? We say, I need strength, I need this, I need that. And oftentimes it's presented to us as a difficult situation. Right. When you ask for more money, that means you got to work harder. It's not always presented to us as something shiny. And so we don't build the capacity to be resilient because we're always looking for the easiest route. We're always looking for the easy way out. Listen, and it's difficult as a parent because as parents, our job is to make our kids' life as easy as possible in our minds. And what we do a lot of times is we cripple them because we give them so much without requiring them to work for anything, right? And so we don't build that resilience. Listen, my daughter is 8 years old, and she's a very good basketball player. She's good. She's good. She's never lost until last Saturday. And I'm talking about in the last year she's been actually playing competitive basketball. She's never lost. And last Saturday, after she lost her game, she sat down and she cried. Right. Played a great game. Shut the best player on the other team down completely. But because she had never been in a position where she had lost, she didn't know how to deal with that. And oftentimes, in order to be resilient, you've got to be placed in positions where you lose so that you learn how to win. You've got to be placed in positions where you lose so that you know how to win. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about some characteristics of being resilient on your lunch break. Listen, you've got to understand that you're not a victim, you're a survivor. If you want to be resilient, you have to, your perspective of your situation and your past situations, you can't look at it from a victim standpoint. You have to look at it from a survival standpoint. And I like to tell people all the time, anytime you see situations from survival, you see purpose, because you wouldn't have survived the situation if you didn't have a purpose. Right. And you may have been a victim, but your viewpoint has to be that of one who survived. And I only survived because I have a purpose. Y'all tracking with me? I've only survived because I have a purpose. Your mentality, if you're going to be resilient, has to be one that is not victim based, it's survival based. Right? It's survival. Listen, I gave the analogy before about when I was working on my doctorate years ago. And when I was working on my doctorate, I realized that this had nothing to do with writing. This had nothing to do with how articulate I am. This had nothing to do with how smart I may think that I am. It had everything to do with me learning how to survive. Listen, all they wanted to see is that I wasn't going to quit. And once I learned that this is about survival, I had to develop that capacity to have resilience. And you have not only been through what you've been through, you survived it for a purpose. You survived it for a purpose. I know a lot of people who watch Practical Purpose podcast are not Christians, right? And that's fine. And I'm still telling you too, you survived everything that you've been through for a purpose. You're on the earth for a purpose. And if you don't learn how to have the capacity of practicing resilience, then you're not going to be successful as you move forward in your life in whatever capacity that may be. Pecan 10 says you never lose, you either win or you learn. You have to change the perception of the loss. Everything is a growing experience. Listen, I was at the networking event this morning downtown in Columbia, and I told a lady the same thing that I tell you all the time, that closed doors are oftentimes just as important as open ones. Closed doors are oftentimes just as important as open doors. Oftentimes, we get to a place where we're so frustrated, and it's real. You're frustrated because a door didn't open. And sometimes the door being closed was the best blessing that it could have been. Right. And I'm there now. I'm there now. Oftentimes, you have to be grateful for the closed doors. You got to be grateful for closed doors, because closed doors oftentimes is protection and provision. Closed doors are oftentimes protection and provision. Sometimes God doesn't allow you to go through a door because he knows what's on the other side and you don't. And so oftentimes we've got to get to a place that we're going to be resilient. We're going to be resilient in our lives. We've got to understand that we have survived for a reason. Every situation you've been through, every heartache, every disappointment, everything that has happened to you as a child in your past has happened to you, and you survived it because there's purpose in it and there's purpose in you. All right. You have to practice emotional intelligence if you're going to be resilient. You got to practice emotional intelligence. Listen, you've got to know how to not let your feelings always guide your reactions. Because if you did everything by how you felt, you wouldn't be on your lunch break right now. You'd be at the house sleep. Right. We have to get out of this thing. And here's what created it. I'm gonna just be real. What created it is this my truth. This is my truth. Right. And because it's your truth, you think it's okay to display your emotions any kind of way. It's something that I talk to the youth about a lot, about code switching. Sometimes you got to know that you can't say this and you can't say that and react and respond in this way in this environment. Right. And so you got to practice emotional intelligence if you're going to be resilient. Listen, it's your reaction to adversity, not adversity itself, that determines how your life story will develop. Listen. It's your reaction to adversity. I'm sorry, I get excited when I start talking about this stuff. It's your reaction to adversity, not adversity itself, that determines how your life story will develop. It's your reaction. It's your response ability, right? How do you respond to what happened to you? Listen, Lou Holt says life is what? 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. Resiliency has to be your response to adversity. Listen, I can remember growing up and sometimes we would get in fights. And my daddy would be like, even if you lose the fight, that joker shouldn't want to fight you again. Because every time he knocked you down, you kept getting back up. Listen, you've got to respond to life in such a way that you can knock me down, but I'm coming back. I'm coming back. And I'm gonna come back every time. And I may not come back more powerful every time, but I'm coming back every time until it's over. And listen. That's has to be our response to adversity. It's not adversity that teaches us, it's our reaction to adversity. How are you going to respond? Pecan 10 says protection and provision. What else she said? Riverside. Listen, if you on the river, you know what I'm talking about. You was gonna fight till you got finished fighting, unless that street light came on, and then you had to get to the house, right? No such thing as my truth is either the truth or your perception and experience, right? Right. We gotta we people are not gonna ever stop saying that, and I understand what they're saying, but there's not but one truth. It's not but one truth. All right. All right. So emotional intelligence. How do you react to adversity? How do you react to adversity? Do you know your feelings? Right? When things happen to you and you shut down, do you know that? Are you prepared for that? Do you know that that's what's going to happen to you? That's how you're going to react. Somebody cut you off in traffic and you stick your middle finger up and start cussing. Do you know yourself enough to know this is my emotion? This is what happens to me. And can you learn how to put that in its proper perspective? All right, here's another thing you've got to practice if you're going to be resilient is you got to have self-compassion. We're too hard on ourselves sometimes. Oftentimes we are terribly hard on ourselves. And don't get me wrong, you should be your biggest critic. You should be your biggest critic, but you can't be. My wife tells me this all the time. She said, babe, you so hard on yourself. And that's a practice that I've got to work on. You got to give yourself grace. You've got to give yourself self-compassion. All right. You don't baby yourself, but you have to understand your experiences and how they shape your reaction to adversity. But you have to always keep the mindset that if I get knocked down, I'm coming back. Pecan it's self-awareness. You getting ahead of me. I'm getting there. I'm getting there, counselor. I'm getting the self-awareness. All right. I'm coming back every time. I don't care what gets thrown at me. Right? That has to be our reaction. And oftentimes, tell people sports builds that in you. Sports will make you competitive. Sports will make you go hard every time, right? Because in sports, you're either going to win or you're going to lose, right? And oftentimes it takes that loss, that embarrassment to move you to the next level. It takes that embarrassment to move you to the next level. Listen, you've got to have that survival mentality, that emotional intelligence. I'm moving out. And that self-compassion. Listen, you know how we do on the Practical Purpose podcast. I got to give you a text. I'm not going to unpack the text, but I just want to give you something to get you through your lunch break. Paul talks about this in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 8 and 9. And he says this, he says, we are hard pressed on every side, but we're not crushed. We're perplexed, but we're not in despair. We are persecuted, but we're not forsaken. Watch this. We're cast down, but we're not destroyed. Paul is talking about resilience there. He's saying that the adversity that comes in our lives is going to keep coming and is never going to stop, but it can't destroy us. We cannot allow it to destroy us. All right. So I gave you some things to deal with regard to adversity, but I want to give you 4 attributes of people who are resilient. Here it is. People who are resilient understand awareness. How aware are you spiritually, mentally, and emotionally? How aware are you? How aware are you? Self-awareness is a key aspect of being resilient. You got to know who you are. And watch this. People miss this. You have to know where you are. See, a lot of people think they know who they are. They don't know where they are. And you've got to know where you are in comparison to where you're supposed to be. You you gotta know where you are in comparison to where you're supposed to be. Self-awareness, people who are resilient, they're self-aware. They know who they are. They know this situation ain't right for me. They know it's time, especially when you're making career decisions, right? When you're making career decisions, those are the biggest decisions that happen, that we oftentimes look at the reaction and the response and the wherewithal and the advice that other people give us without being self-aware. Listen, I know this situation ain't working for me no more. It's time for me to move. I know who I am, but I know where I am, and I know where I'm supposed to be. Yes, I think it's Deion Sanders when he took the job at Colorado. He said that my calling and my gift is not about destination, not about location, it's about destination. It's not about where I am positioned right now, it's where I know I'm supposed to be, right? Awareness of others is key. Who's with you and who's for you? Y'all know I say it all the time. Everybody that's with you is not for you. So you got to know, if I'm gonna be resilient in my life, when things happen, I got to know who's around me. And some of us don't have the relational intelligence to know who's for us and who's just with us. That's a harsh reality. Some of us don't have the relational intelligence to know who's for us and who's with us. And so you keep allowing people to stay with you who have never had your best interest at heart. And then when they steal your money, or they steal your joy, or they steal your pride, or they steal everything that you've worked hard to do, whether or not emotionally or materialistically, when they take it from you, you then begin to realize that they were never there for you in the first place. But your emotional intelligence, or rather your relational intelligence, is based off of your awareness of those who are around you. Listen, remember the story of Joseph. Joseph went, he told his brothers his whole dream. Why? Because they were with him, but they weren't for him. And he didn't know that. He didn't know that. Listen, the first step towards change is awareness. Let me say that again. The first step towards change is awareness. It's awareness. Then it's reflection. And then change can happen. Remember the story of the prodigal son? The text says that he was living a riotous lifestyle, right? He went out there and he's out there with the pigs and all that. He done squandered all his money. First, he became aware of where he was. I'm not in my father's house. I'm out here with these pigs, right? And then he reflected. The text says he came to himself, then he came back. Your ability to be resilient begins with your ability to be aware of where you are and then reflect on where you're supposed to be. Then you move to go to that place. Listen, because oftentimes, I'm trying not to get off. Oftentimes, God does not provide where we are. He sends the provision to where we're supposed to be. Let me say that again. Oftentimes, God, and I know church folk ain't gonna like that. Oftentimes, he don't provide for where we are. He provides where we're supposed to be. Didn't he do that with Elijah? He said, go down to the Cherith Brook, and there I'll command ravens to feed you. He didn't get the ravens could have came to where Elijah was. He put provision where he's supposed to be. And oftentimes, you can't be resilient in your life because you're not where you're supposed to be. Listen, the second attribute, and I'm going because I don't want to take your whole lunch break. The second attribute that you need to make sure you have, or another attribute, I shouldn't say the second ones, there's so many. Self-control. Self-control. Do you believe you have control over your own life? Do you believe that you have control over your own life? Or do you play the blame game? Listen, now there are some things that you can't control. Listen, there are some things. I think Inky Johnson says you control the controllables. There are some things you just can't control, right? But people who are resilient, They believe that what I am doing has an effect on my ability to be resilient. The outcome is going to come based off of some things that I do. Listen, and so it's that old phrase I think by Napoleon, "Que sera, sera," whatever will be, will be. And oftentimes we think that that's true, but it's not always true. Whatever will be is not always true. Whatever will be is based off of what you do. Things don't just happen in life. Nothing happens in our life by coincidence. It happens because of things that we do. All right, or things that God has put in place to happen in our life. Listen, your actions affect the outcome. Your choices matter. You control the controllables. Your actions affect the outcome. Your choices always matter. Listen, we make some poor choices. I make them every day. We make poor choices on a regular basis. We've got to understand that if we are trying to get to a destination, then that happens one decision at a time. I talked to some students at a middle school yesterday. Me and one of my mentees, Trey Gregg. I don't know if he's on OG. We talked to some students, and one thing that I told them that I tell my students all the time is your daily decisions determine your destiny. Right? So it's not one decision here and one decision there that ultimately determine where I end up. It's the daily habits I put in place. It's the daily decisions that determine my destiny. And so when you begin to think about being resilient, your choices matter. Your choices matter. Ever had food poisoning? Your choices matter. Okay. No man is free that can't control himself. Pythagoras said that. No man is free that can't control himself. Listen, we in the business of trying to control other people and we can't control ourselves. That goes for everybody, me included. You can't. We've got to learn how to control other people who are resilient. They understand their deficiencies and they have a better control on what they can control. Self-control begins with your mind. Begins with the thoughts that you entertain. It begins with what happens. You ever just been sitting on the couch and you good. You ain't hungry. You know what I mean? And then one of them commercials hit. Before you know it, you back in the kitchen. Right? Right. It's the thoughts that come. I think it was I can't remember who said it. It wasn't Kenneth Copeland. Kenneth Hagin. He said you can't stop a bird from sitting on your head, but you can stop it from building a nest there. Right? We've got to bring our thoughts into captivity, right, and control what we allow ourselves to dwell on. Y'all give me a few more minutes. All right, so that's awareness. That's self-control. Resilient people practice awareness. They practice self-control. Resilient people have problem-solving skills. How rational are you in adverse times? How rational are you in adverse situations? Right? Because oftentimes we're not as rational as we think we are. It doesn't make, we think it makes sense, but it doesn't really make sense. How rational are you in difficult times, in adverse times? Can you spot solutions and plan to get to them? When negativity happens, when adversity hits your life, can you spot solutions? Can you figure out what this is what the end should look like? Right? This is what the end should look like. Do you get tunnel vision or are you holistic? See, all of this determines your ability to be resilient, your ability to bounce back from difficulty. Do you get tunnel vision? Are you holistic in your approach? Do you see the whole thing? I was playing chess with my son. He's 10. I'm trying to teach him how to play chess, and he's pretty good. He's pretty good for someone who hasn't played a whole lot. And what he does though is he gets tunnel vision on the chessboard. And because he gets tunnel vision, he's looking at one piece and one move at a time instead of looking at the board holistically and being able to think 2 and 3 steps ahead. When adversity happens in your life, do you get tunnel vision or do you see it from a holistic approach? And because adversity will have it'll have a spiritual effect on you. And if you get tunnel vision, you won't recognize the emotional effect that it's having on you. And then you won't recognize the physical effect that it's having on you. You look around when adversity hits and you say, I ain't ate nothing in 2 days because you got so tunnel vision. And this is where church folk get upset with me because things happen and we immediately go and all we do is pray. We don't go see no counselor. We get tunnel vision. I ain't saying don't pray. You need to pray. You should pray. But you need to go see the counselor too. You need to go see a therapist because there's some things that happen to you that you need someone on this level to help you get through. And so oftentimes you get tunnel vision. Obstacles are opportunities to grow your critical thinking skills. You can't solve problems with the same mindset that was used to create them. I read that. You can't solve problems. I can't take credit for that one. You can't solve problems with the same mindset that was used to create them. PK10 said, sinner. Yeah, church folk, go see the counselor. You got a wonderful counselor, but you need another one too sometimes. Listen, you can't solve problems with the same mindset that was used to create those problems. All right. And so you've got to get to the place if you're going to be resilient. If you're going to be resilient, you got to bounce back. My brother Sheen, all the way from the other side of the world. My brother, man. Appreciate you. The Bible says there's what? There's safety in wise counsel. Yeah. Church folk. And that wise counsel is not always the pastor. It's not only the pastor. Sometimes you got to go see a therapist. I'm not going to stay there. I'm not going to stay there because I only got a few more minutes. I got to move. What the preacher say, I got to put it in high gear. All right. So attributes of people who are resilient, they're aware, they're self-aware, but they're also aware of those people that are around them, people who may be with them, but not for them, right? They practice self-control as much as they can, right? They have problem-solving skills. They don't become tunnel vision. They have a holistic approach to solving problems. Here's the last one. They understand their support systems, their social support. Again, who's in your corner? Who's in your corner? So often, I'm going to say this, and y'all might not like it, but you can unsubscribe. Black folk, we don't like to tell folk our business. And so we don't always tap into the support that we really and truly have because we don't want to tell nobody our business. Listen, you've got to know who's in your corner, who's in your inner circle. Listen, Jesus had 12, but he had Peter, James, and John. Them three was with him at the garden. Them three was with him at when he was on the mountain, the transfiguration, right? He understood relational intelligence. Listen, some things I can say to Peter, I can't say to Matthias. Right? And you got to know who's really in your corner now. Because that was Joseph's problem. He told his dream to people who was with him, but not for him. And you've got to be aware of the support systems that's in place. Church folk, it's therapists that go to your church. But we don't send people there. We tell them to just keep praying. Peter was slicing off ears for Jesus. Yeah. we not going. You be PK, you be trying to get me off the topic. Relational intelligence will make or break you. Let me say that again. Relational intelligence will make or break you. It's hard to be resilient with the wrong people around you. If people around you just babying you, just telling you how great you are, how good you are, how smart you are, how helping you play the blame game, helping you be a victim and not a survivor, those people are crippling you. You remember the Titans when Coach Yotes just kept babying Petey. And Boone said, listen, you cutting my legs from up under me. You crippling him. You got to put the right people around you that are not there to just affirm you. They're there to give you that critical talk, that critical and those difficult conversations that you don't want to hear, but that you need to hear if you really care about growth. Resilient people surround themselves with people more resilient than they are. Survival mode mentality. Right. Right. Resilient people surround themselves with people who are more resilient than they are. I think it was what's my man name? I just lost it. He said if you're the smartest one in your circle, you're in the wrong circle. The people around you should have skills and intangibles that complement you so that you can grow. Resilient people surround themselves with people more resilient than they are. Relationships, when you're dealing with support, require people skills. Relationships require people. This is why leadership development is so impactful, because a lot of people are in leadership positions that aren't leaders, because leadership is influence. And in order for me to influence, I got to have people skills to develop relationships. And there are too many people who do not have the skills, the intangibles, those soft skills to be able to develop those relationships to move people forward. You gotta develop relationships. Listen, so as we wrap it up, we talked about how you can be resilient. Let me leave you with something to keep you, some closure, some homework. The next time you're knocked down, whatever area of life that is, whether or not it's public or private, whether or not it's relational, emotional, spiritual, the next time you're knocked down, I want you to write down physically, write down how you will respond before you respond. Listen, how are you going to respond to adversity before you do it? I want you to write it down because it's critical. It's critical. I'm going to go back to that quote that I read before. It's your reaction to adversity, not adversity itself, that determines how your life story will develop. It's your reaction to it that's going to determine how your life story will develop. Remember what Paul said. My man, do the homework. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And the other thing that will cause you to do too, Sheen, is it's going to cause you not to react so quickly. It's going to cause you to have to process your reaction. In education circles, we call that wait time. Right? It's going to cause you not to just fire right back when you could. Even if you're in the right, you're going to think about and process a better way to respond, because again, our response ability is critical to our success. It's critical to our emotional intelligence, and it's critical to our relational intelligence. Listen, you can be resilient. You are resilient. I'm gonna give you the text one more time before we get out of here. Paul says it in 2 Corinthians 4:8-9. Paul says we're hard pressed on every side, but we're not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, cast down, but not destroyed. Paul is talking about adversity. He's talking about being resilient. And we all are resilient when we decide to practice resilience in our life. So I want you to do your homework. Next time you're knocked down, next time something happens that's adverse in your life, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be financial, it could be spiritual, it could be emotional, It could be relational. It could be with your kids, with your wife. I want you to write down how you're going to respond. Remember your awareness. Remember your self-control. Remember your problem-solving skills. And remember that you always have a support system somewhere. Even if you don't think you got it, you got a support system somewhere that can help you. All right. So this was the Practical Purpose Podcast. This was the midday motivation. We talked about resilience. I want you to share, like, share, subscribe to the channel, YouTube, Facebook. Share it out to people, as many people as you can. Because that's one thing that we talk about here on the Practical Purpose Podcast is I try to address things that go across any type of belief system, any type of background, socioeconomic status. Everybody in their life is going to deal with situations in which they have to be resilient. But we don't always practice that resilience in our life, but we all do have the capacity to do it if we're educated on how to do it. So I hope that this gave you something simple and some nuggets that you can take with you the next time that you're faced with a situation in which you've got to practice resilience. Listen, I always try to leave out with something musical. I'm waiting on Sheen to send me something I can drop for him to leave out with. But I'm gonna leave you with my boy Mike B, musician at City of Refuge in California today. A few seconds. Check it out. See y'all next time. This is Dr. Williams signing off.
The flip went a little like this. Oh yeah, it got real.